Well, check it out, y'all. We got what you need. We're all living in apartments, condos, vans. Well, dude, even you can have a studio in a box. Yes, we can help you with that right here at Blind Knowledge. We work on your budget and we figure out your measurements. We'll get you the best sound for the best price. Let me know, 877-237-1143 or at blindknowledge.com. Yep.
Spectres all around me, living in stark, blazing the dark. One by one, pictures gather round me. Where those moonflowers used to lost no more. Spectres gather round here, living in stark, blazing the dark. Night by night, stare into the black where moonflowers used to grow.
Welcome back to Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, here trying to bring a little normalcy to the world. Does it ever freaking happen? No, we know better. We know better. We don't ask that question anymore. That's a void we don't want to walk into. But once again, I'm back to just show you the unnormalcy of the world. And as always, I brought a great guest to help me with that. And this week's guest, the third guest this week so far is Michelle Fondin. Vedic master, author, and YouTuber, and a lot more than that too, but we're getting to all of it, as you guys always know we do. First things first, how you doing tonight, Michelle?
I'm great. Thanks so much, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, my pleasure. As soon as I saw your profile, I was like, yep, I need that one. That's one I need in the collection. There's
a lot. There's a lot, right?
I mean, I got almost 200 in my collection at this point, so keep it going. I like to collect podcast guests, basically. It's my hobby. But let me start off with the first question I ask everybody on this show. It gets edited a little bit based on who the person is, of course, but what brought you into the spiritual side of life? What led you down this road and made you want to open that door?
Yeah. I've always been interested in spirituality, and I was raised very religiously, but when I was 5 years old, I had this very tumultuous upbringing. And when I was 5 years old, I was living in fear most of the time with my primary caregiver. And I thought it was God, but I really believe it was the angels talking to me, like reassuring me that I was going to be okay, that everything was going to be fine. And I always said, like, I have these conversations with God. I talk to God. And then fast forward many years, many decades. And I went to see a tarot reader for the very first time in 2012, end of 2012, after a very harsh breakup. And that was kind of my first exposure to the paranormal world, if you will, of like spirits and spirit mediums and angels. And it opened me up to something that I had kind of denied because of my harsh Catholic upbringing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I can't tell you how often I hear that in this show that, yep, my religious upbringing made me put aside my gifts for basically 25 years until I got free. There's more to life. And I mean, unfortunately, it's a sign of the times, basically, that religion is slowly becoming a thing of the past, for most people at least. And the spiritual side of the world is opening up more. The awakening is coming, as they say, and as I've been told. But
yeah,
I'm waiting to see what happens. But I mean, it's just these things unleash when you finally can get out of that control of a religious organization, and it's mind freeing. It frees your mind completely, and it changes your world.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. And in fact, when that one reader who was like, she was a spirit medium and a tarot reader and an astrology reader, I had never even shuffled like a tarot deck before, but she had me shuffle it. And then she laid out the cards and she was like, "You're going to do this one day." And I said, "What? Astrology?" She goes, "You're going to do this." She's pointed the tarot cards. And I was like, "No, you're crazy, lady. You are so crazy. There's no way I would ever do that." And 3 years later, I was reading tarot cards.
Oh, the cards do hold many mysteries, and most of the time they're pretty damn accurate.
Yeah.
From the ones I've gotten, at least. I mean, I've gotten my share on this show alone, and they're always pretty accurate. I mean, it's scary. It's one of those things where you're like, okay, I don't like this. I don't like this one bit, but okay. And then 2 months later, damn it, they were right.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's just what it is. And one of my co-hosts, my other show, is a tarot reader. I mean, he doesn't even do it like professionally or anything, but he has the ability. He just doesn't like to go out there and show it off, kind of. But
Yeah.
so I mean, it's just one of those things. So, did you have any other experiences in your life besides talking to an angel or / God, which we'll get into that in a minute? But
Yeah. So I had a lot of psychic insights that came to me at so many different periods before I actually recognized that I had these psychic gifts.
Mhm.
Funnily enough, when I was a kid, I'm much older than I look, but when I was a kid, I would listen to radios shows, and they would give away prizes, and you would have to dial in on your home phone to get to be the 13th caller or the 10th caller to win.
All
And
right,
I
now you're making me feel old because I grew up with the same things. Now you're making me feel
there you
old.
go. But with pretty good accuracy, I could predict which ones I would win. And when I was a kid, I'm talking like 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, I would win concert tickets all the time because I could predict I'm going to call in and I'm going to be the right number caller. And every single time it was right. And so I was getting all these free concert tickets, backstage passes. But I didn't understand. I just thought it was good luck. I didn't understand that I had this power of prediction or this power, this ability to predict the right place, the right time to do things. Um, I'm divorced now, but when I was 20, I had met my husband, the one that I was married to for 13 years, and we just knew each other, we were casual with each other. Really didn't know each other well, but I was in an airport in Amsterdam because I went to college in France, and I saw this vision of a man who looked a lot like my ex-husband, and I said to myself, all of a sudden the vision came to me, you're going to marry this guy and have 2 children. I ended up having 3, but it was a girl first and then a boy, and I was like, that's just I don't even know this guy. That's totally crazy. I don't even like this guy. And just a couple of years later, I was pregnant with his child and we ended up getting married. So there were just these like predictive visions that I would constantly have, but I always brushed them away as mere coincidence. I always brushed them away as like, oh, that's just happenstance or that's just luck or something.
Yeah, a bit of foresight, or what's the word for it? Well, they're not dreams. I guess they wouldn't be premonitions really because they're not really. But then again, premonitions don't
They
have
were
to be
like
dreams.
visions. Yeah. I mean, they were like visions, but I didn't
Yeah,
equate it to visions at the time because I don't think I had that awareness that
yeah.
that actually existed.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, most of us wouldn't believe if we started having those, we'd be going to see a doctor because we're like, why am I
Yeah,
seeing things?
exactly.
And why are they coming true? That's a real question here, Doc. Why are they coming true to me? It's just, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've had premonitions, but never anything of that stature or that something that mattered that much in life, like who you're gonna marry. Like it's always
Yeah,
like
that was nuts. I mean,
it's
that was the thing is that I really kind of let it go for a year or so. I didn't hold any credence to it. But when I unexpectedly got pregnant with his child, I was like, what? And things were slowly unfolding. And I did have a girl first and then a boy. That came
yeah.
true.
I
So
mean, when visions happen, they are 90% of the time, I'd say, usually pretty right on, and it's another thing that's scary because it's like, why? I mean, even when like I said, mine were nothing big. There were conversations I'd overhear in a room somewhere,
mhm.
school, work, whatever, depending how old I was. And it would just be like, it'd still be scary because it came true, and I'd just be like, why did I dream about this? This holds no impact on my life in any sort of way to the
Yeah.
most minute detail. Nothing has to do with my life. So it's just like, okay, whatever. And I mean, I'd move on, but it's scary because it's like, why?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, and when I would, yeah, like I think when I would have them, and this was probably in my very early 20s, I was still in college, but when I would have the visions, I would kind of blank out for a minute. And I think like that would freak me out. That would totally freak me out because it wasn't like I was in the present moment. It's almost like a daydream, right? It's almost like a daydream that you're not asking for, if you will.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it's an intense daydream that you can't get out of, which
yeah.
is a whole nother type of scary. And I mean, did people? I gotta ask, did people ever around you ever just be like, Michelle, what's going on? Hello, like shaking you? Like, was it one of those like
No,
TV
because
scenes?
I feel like it happens much quicker than you're perceiving that it's happening, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah,
it,
like
it
a
might be just in the matter of seconds, but since time seems to stand still for you as it's happening, it seems like it's a lot longer than a few seconds. Does that make
like
sense?
yeah. I mean, because we anybody can dream a dream that feels like it's a couple days in the dream, and then you wake up and it's only like an hour later, and it's
Exactly.
like time in different dimensions. Time moves differently. What can I say? Same as space. In different parts of space, time moves differently. Like it's just kind of a fact of life in a way that we can't prove yet. But
Hmm.
so meeting your husband that way, I gotta ask, do you believe in soulmates then? Because I mean,
Yeah, well,
I,
so my husband was definitely not a soulmate. I believe he was a karmic relationship. And I do believe in soulmates. As you probably have seen from my bio, I wrote a couple of books on twin flames, and
yes,
I believe that we live repetitive lives, meaning like our soul travels to different lives, um, and we tend to encounter the same people in each lifetime, and they might play different roles in our lives, but we tend to encounter similar people. So I believe a karmic relationship is like you lived a lifetime with someone, some bad juju happened between the two of you. Either you owe them a karmic debt or they owe you a karmic debt. And then in a subsequent lifetime, that debt needs to be repaid. And so you enter into a relationship with them again to sort that out. And I really believe with my ex husband, I feel like that was more of karmic debt needing to be repaid because it was such we were never on the same wavelength ever.
hmm
But we nonetheless were married 13 years, had 3 children. We were together for 15, but it never felt right. It
yeah,
just felt functional, but it also felt like he was repeating a role that I like with my mother. I felt, and this was full decade later that I realized this, that he was really playing out the same role my mother played with me as I was growing up. And so again, that felt very karmic. It felt like, okay, there's something that I must have done in a past life that, we needed to sort this out. So yeah, but I do believe in soulmates, and I don't believe that you only have one soulmate.
well, yeah. I mean, I am definitely a believer in multiple soulmates because I mean, the soul evolves and grows even when we're using it. So I mean, it's not, and I am also a huge believer in that we kind of reincarnate and go to different
Mhm.
bodies, and we are following a path, whether that's a predetermined path through different bodies or it's a kind of a see how it goes type of thing each time. Like I don't
Mhm.
know that for sure. I've heard both theories, and I kind of can't decide which way I want to believe, but I do believe in the big alien spirit DMV waiting room in the sky that we all go to when we die, and we wait for our ticket to get punched again to go to the next body, basically. And
Yeah,
but I mean, people do follow us around, which is creepy in some ways, if you ask me,
it
because
is, right?
it always goes to my mind. It's like, okay, so my lover from my past life is my brother in this life. That
Right.
that's not fair, but it's just like that's fucked up. Like, what the hell? Come on, alien.
Exactly.
Come on, aliens. Program a little better. But if you're gonna put me in the matrix, make it work. Make it work. Don't make things awkward. But I don't know. It's just one of those things. Hopefully they're not Bama if that happens. But I mean, it's just I don't know. I am a huge believer in reincarnation, so that syncs up with everything I believe in
Yeah,
perfectly.
and
And
and that's something again that taught not to believe with monotheistic religions. And when
Mhm.
I began my path of spirituality, and part of that was I studied and worked with Dr. Deepak Chopra, who some of you might know is an author
Oh,
and doctor.
I saw that in your profile. I'm like, oh, that's a name drop and a half right there.
Yeah, so I wrote for his blog for 3 years actually, and I worked with him. I was trained through his center, and I began because he's from India. His whole family's from India, so he started teaching a lot of Vedic philosophy from India, which really embodies the whole reincarnation bit. And so it took me a long time to be able to assimilate that. But then once I did, it just made so much more sense as to why life is the way it is and how we encounter these people who we seemingly know, but there's no way we could know them in this lifetime. It just, all the pieces started coming together a lot more once I embraced that philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, at some point in your life, you always meet that friend, and you're like, we've been friends for a long time, even though we just met.
Exactly.
There's something here. I don't know what it is, but it feels like we've known each other our whole lives, even though we just met, and I've been alive 25 years and haven't known you. So I mean, it's just one of those things. Like I've had a couple of those, and it's just like, yeah, you're gonna follow me to the next life. I already know it.
Yeah.
It's like you'll be there somehow, some way, some form. Maybe you'll be my dog.
Won't that be cool when like in the next lifetime we're able to like remember? Wouldn't that be cool to be able to remember the life right before, like fully remember it? Be like, oh yeah.
Well, I mean, some children do remember it. I mean, there's plenty of examples, especially in India, where children remember their past lives 100%, and they can say that was my house. They can say this was my husband, or this is my wife if they're still alive, and or even at the grave. They can say
Yeah,
it. I mean,
I have heard those stories. Yeah.
and it's those stories like they bring tears to your eyes, but also scares you. It's like
It's scary. It's a little scary. Yeah.
because before I really considered reincarnation, I started hearing those stories. I was just like, "What's this now? The church lied? How dare they?" But shouldn't be surprised at this point, but I mean, yeah, it is what it is. So you do offer on because I was checking out your website the other day, and you do offer twin flame coaching, which I'm kind of curious. How do you coach that? Like that's just my
So
curiosity there.
basically, that's really interesting. So let me just give you a 20-second backstory. So I've done life coaching since I worked through the Chopra Center with Deepak Chopra's organization. I've done that since 2008, and it was more a mind body health, but it's mind body spirit health, if you will, because that's what Vedic philosophy believes is it's the holistic person of mind, body, soul. So I've been doing that since 2008. And in 2018, I met a person who is my twin flame. And I began the journey already having had many spiritual awakenings in my life, but I didn't know about twin flames. I had no clue what it was. I just knew all these weird things started to happen. And as these weird things were starting to unfold, I started posting those things on YouTube, and I already had a YouTube channel. It was supporting my published books. It was supporting my stuff with Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, spirituality. But I was like, kind of like, hey, is anybody out there kind of experiencing some of this stuff? And I got a great response. And so as my story was unfolding with the twin flame journey, I just transitioned my life coaching over to twin flame coaching, including tarot and other aspects of that coaching that I still used, which is really on like emotional health, right?
Yeah.
And relationship health and things like that. But I do integrate tarot into it as well, which soon became, and this is something weird about the twin flame journey, is that even if you're spiritually awakened, or even if you're aware of spirits, angels, spirit guides, ancestors, even if you're aware of that, once you encounter a twin soul, like that, those gifts magnify by like 100%. So my gifts went from reading tarot cards to literally hearing the voices of the angels, which again, I heard at age 5, but I had shut off. I had shut down.
Yeah, of course.
So I use tarot cards as a tool, but I can also channel the person's guardian angels directly as well to hear like what do they need to tell this person.
Interesting. I've never heard tarot described that way before, so that's kind of a new thing to me, and that's interesting. It's got me thinking now. I like that. I like when interviews actually put something new in my head, and it's like, okay, something new to add to this whole puzzle of the world, and the pieces are not all quite there yet, but it's getting more filled every interview. I swear to God. And
Well, if you think about it, the tarot is just a tool, right? It's a
yeah,
tool to connect with the other world, whatever veil there is in front of our physical realm and the spiritual realm. Things like tarot, or even some people use pendulums or any other tool that you would use,
oh, there's a lot of divination tools out there.
right? Like the
We
I
did an
Ching,
episode
yeah,
on
things
them.
like that. I've never used the I Ching, but whatever divination tool you use is just a method to connect with the spirit world. And so, ideally, if you're a good enough reader, if you will, you can just read the spirit energy without any of those tools. For me, I think a picture speaks 1,000 words. And so for me, it's really useful to use tarot cards, or I use oracle cards as well,
Yeah.
because it helps the client look at they can see visually with a picture. Look, it says this, or there's a heart right here, or there's a pair of doves here. And so a lot of times our human selves have such difficulty just listening to somebody and going, oh yeah, that's just BS. You're just speaking. You know what I mean? But if they can see it, then they're more likely to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, tarot cards do have a profound effect. I mean, certain cards you see the drawings on them, and there's like, that doesn't look good. Like,
Yeah.
I've gotten the death card once or twice, and I was like, am I gonna die? Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
die yet. I
Well,
got kids.
let's
I got kids to
demystify the
support.
death card, right? The death card is transformation. So it's not so
I
much
learned
about
that.
death.
Yeah,
It could be the end of a chapter, right? Or personal transformation.
yeah, I learned that the hard way. When it was my first tarot reading, I was like, oh, okay, good to know.
Yeah,
Good
I
to
know.
know.
It's super scary if you don't have any background in tarot and you start seeing like the Three of Swords, which has the heart with the three swords going through it. You're like, what? What? That looks terrible.
Well, I figured that one wasn't literal, but I had to. The death one, I'm like, how else can you take that? But yeah, I mean, tarot. I love tarot. It's a very good medium for divination. It really is. I mean, we did an episode on divination techniques on my other show, and my God, I found a list of some of the most outrageous ones used throughout history, and some of them are just so ridiculous. Like
Mhm.
literally using boils on like the king's feet to like divine things, and it's like,
Oh my God, that's crazy.
I'm like, why? Why did we ever think this was a good idea? Like,
Did they like burn his feet to get boils or whatever, or what?
no, kings just naturally have them from being lazy. I'm assuming. I don't know. I'm,
Oh,
I'm assuming. I'm sure.
interesting. That's disgusting, though.
Oh, a lot of them were disgusting, and a lot of them were very harmful to animals, which didn't make me happy. But
That's not good. Yeah.
so, as a Vedic master, you had to. One of my other favorite topics is yoga because it's something I've never done, probably won't ever do. But
Okay, sure.
I like. I
I
mean,
respect
I'm
that.
a I'm a big guy. Flexibility is not my forte. But I mean,
I've seen a lot of big people doing yoga, but go
I
ahead.
mean, I've thought about it. I've thought about it, but it's just time don't have. But
Yeah.
I mean, trying to run a family and run a podcast empire and all that, and it's just a lot of stuff I don't get to do as is. So yoga is just not in the top of that list to do next. I mean, so what what made you want to get into yoga? Like what? I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
obviously for the body. I mean, I'm assuming that part, but I mean, because it's good for it's great for the body. But I mean, what other aspects of it?
Yeah, so my journey into yoga was super interesting, and I have a kind of a cool story that ties into that as well.
Nice.
Um, I was Whoa, oh, do you want the juicy details of the story?
This is an unrated podcast, so
All right, cool. Okay. So when I was 17, I was in a relationship. Well, the relationship didn't start till I was 18. So I was in a relationship with the art teacher from my high school. He was not my art teacher, but he was an art teacher at my Catholic high school. and, um, but he is the person that opened me up to the life that I live today because he was vegetarian. He was studying Zen Buddhism. He had me reading all of these books about spirituality, awakening, Zen Buddhism, veganism, vegetarianism. And this was back in 1989, 1988, 1989, before really a lot of people were open to the concepts of, mindfulness, Zen Buddhism, yoga. And I took my first yoga class with him. And interestingly enough, my first yoga class was led by another teacher at my school. Her name is Leanne Lewis Prescott, and she was a religion teacher at my Catholic high school. And so I took my first yoga class with my boyfriend teacher, which we didn't take the class till after I graduated together, with Leanne Lewis Prescott. Now, the interesting piece is I started studying with Deepak Chopra in 2007. And in 2009, I was getting my Vedic Master Certificate through the Chopra Center, and I was studying to become a meditation teacher. And I was studying all my Sanskrit, which is super difficult if you know a little Sanskrit. And I went into the bookstore and I was just browsing around for books. And I look up out of the corner of my eye. I see this small woman, 4'10", with a bathrobe and a towel, which is a spa. So that didn't, stun me too much. But I look up and I was like, oh my God, that's her. That's Leanne Lewis Prescott, my first yoga teacher. And here I am at the Chopra Center getting a Vedic Master Certificate, which includes yoga, meditation, and Ayurveda. And I didn't even take the time. I shouted out across the room, Leanne, not really knowing if it was her. And she turned to me. And the weird thing was she was walking toward me at the same time. My first contact at the Chopra Center walked toward me, and we were like in a triangle. And I was like, oh my God, I'm becoming this Vedic master teacher. And here, out of nowhere, out of Michigan, actually, but this is in Southern California.
Yeah.
He was my first yoga teacher. It was so crazy. But it was like that serendipitous event that the universe was telling me, oh, you're doing the right thing. Like, this is your path. This is what you're supposed to be doing.
I mean, yeah, it's like one of those scenes in a movie where all of a sudden, like, the light, it gets brighter and everything just kind of like comes together. It
was so insane. And she actually was there, and I hadn't seen her since I took that first yoga class in 1989. And this was 2009.
Yeah.
And she was there undergoing cancer treatments, like holistic cancer treatments. And to date, she's fine. She recovered. But yeah, she was no longer a teacher at that time. I think she was running a yoga studio in Michigan. So I just thought that was like super interesting. But yeah, that was my first pathway to yoga, was when I was 18 with dating a teacher who really opened me up to this world of, everything that's Eastern philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, you said juicy details and you weren't freaking kidding. Jesus, okay.
Yeah.
I was not the road I was expecting to go down, but freaking hey, that's good content. I know good content when I see it, so I'll take it. I'll take it. I mean, you're 17. You're old enough in my mind to make your own damn mind up.
Well, I mean, again, we didn't start the relationship till I was 18 officially, but
yeah.
Still, it was scandalous. It was a Catholic high school, right?
I mean, with Catholic high schools, that kind of thing happens a lot more than people think it does. So
Yeah.
I knew some Catholic school kids, and Jesus Christ, these things parents send their kids to these Catholic schools because they think it's a cleaner, better environment, and it's really not, from what I've heard. The girls there learn a lot of things a lot faster than girls in public school do.
Mhm.
At least in the 90s, in early 2000s, 90s they did. But I mean,
Yeah, well, when you're suppressed, right, or told you can't do stuff, it makes people wanna do stuff more.
yeah, I guess so. I don't know, but uh, well, damn. But actually, you did mention something there I did want to bring up, and I'm probably gonna butcher this, but Ayurveda. Did I get that right?
Ayurveda, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I haven't really heard that term before, and I was kind of curious,
Oh,
like,
okay,
to what
yeah.
it
So
is.
Ayurveda is mind body medicine from India. It's a 5,000-year-old medical system, and it's mind, body, spirit health. So it's based on the five elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth, and the balancing of those elements within your body and mind. And I studied that when I was with the Chopra Center because when I was 28, I got diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And being into holistic health, but not completely immersed in it yet at that time,
Yeah,
I knew that traditional medicine wasn't going to do it for me, even though I was kind of coerced into doing all the traditional medical treatments. I did a deep dive into Ayurvedic medicine because somebody handed me Deepak Chopra's book, Perfect Health, which talks all about Ayurveda. And that's how I got connected with him because I looked in the back of the book and it was like, you can come and study with us at our center. So that's how I got there. But yeah, Ayurveda is about lifestyle changes, exercise for your mind body type, herbal medicine, detoxification of the body, meditation, yoga. It encompasses it all.
okay, so it's kind of a catch-all for the body, which is,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
but 5,000 years old. Geez, I mean, that's
5,000 years old, yeah, and, it really goes to the root causes of the problems, which is amazing to think about when you think about something that's so ancient, like our health system, the Western model is so incredibly new, it's barely
yeah.
250 years old,
Mhm.
and things like Chinese medicine and Indian medicine, ancient Indian medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, um, have been around for thousands of years and they had systems that worked and made sense. Now, some of it was based in superstitions sometimes.
Of course. Well, I mean, any health system that is that old is gonna be
Yeah,
based
I
on
mean, there's a
superstitions.
lot of weird stuff with based in superstitions, but for the most part, a lot of the remedies really do work. So, yeah, so I
And
studied that with Deepak Chopra's center, got my certificate to do Ayurvedic lifestyle counseling with clients to help them navigate an Ayurvedic lifestyle and herbal medicine lifestyle changes to help it enhance their health. And
well,
my first book actually is about Ayurveda called The Wheel of Healing with Ayurveda.
oh, nice. Which speaking, all right, well, can you I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, but can you possibly give like an example of like a common ailment that and like how the Ayurvedic health would handle
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. So I had this client, I'll just give you an example. Like I had this client who so there are three basic mind body types in Ayurveda. And again, it's based on the elements space, air, fire, water, and earth. And the three mind body types are called Vata, which is comprised of space and air elements, Pitta, which is fire and water elements, and Kapha, which is water and earth elements. So if you think about these principles, someone who has a lot of space and air in their system, because everybody's genetically different, right? But of
Yeah,
course, 5,000 years ago, they did not know about genes and say people are genetically different. So
yeah,
they said people have a lot of space and air within their bodies. So they tend to be thinner, their skin is drier, their eyes are drier because air dries things, right?
of
They
course.
tend to be a little more spacey, people that are head in the clouds, they would have more space in their constitution. Um, People that have high metabolism can have a lot of vata in their system. Well, one of the symptoms is also constipation because a high air quality in the body dries you out. So it dries every system out in your body. So some people just suffer from chronic constipation, as an example. So I had this client who, medically speaking, she had gone to see doctor after doctor after doctor for her chronic constipation. And this was a high-powered businesswoman who couldn't have this in her life because it would be a deal where she couldn't use the bathroom for like 10 days. Like it became very serious. And so she came to me for a consultation, and I did an Ayurvedic mind body test on her. I looked at her lifestyle. I looked at the medications she was taking. I looked at what she was eating, how she was exercising. And we started slowly to change her diet so it had more water in it, water and earth qualities in it, because that
Yep.
wets the body again, if you will. But the one thing that we found was she was on antihistamines, and antihistamines dry you out.
Yeah.
And
Of course.
so we weaned her off the antihistamines while giving her an Ayurvedic formula called Triphala, which is an herbal supplement. And within less than a week, she was cured. So it was pretty amazing, and it's amazing to see those. And usually Ayurveda works best for um, early on in the symptom process, or if something is chronic or something is just an ongoing problem that you tend to have. When something's acute, like really acute, it's not that an alternative healthcare system couldn't work with that, but the Western model does work better with acute symptoms.
Yeah. I mean,
Like if you have asthma, you do want an inhaler if you have asthma,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But then
I mean,
you handle the maintenance with you could handle the maintenance with mind body principles with herbal medicine. The maintenance is something different. The maintenance is what you do every day.
yeah, of course. And I mean, for something like the case you described, I mean, it would have taken Western doctors 20 years to figure out what the hell was causing it. When, I mean, literally, she had to stop taking one pill
And change her
and
diet a little bit to
yeah,
include more like less things like crackers or dry chips or something like that. Like it's about diet modification as well.
which makes sense. I mean, for a constipation issue, that makes 100% sense.
Mhm.
So, like, those two things. I mean,
But it,
antihistamines, I wouldn't have guessed. I wouldn't have guessed that part. But
yeah, because it dries you out. But yeah, so like it's pretty cool when you get to play with the five elements in mind body health, because you can really help someone by just making different tweaks in their lifestyle.
yeah, interesting, interesting. I mean, I've heard amazing stories about Eastern medicine and what it's done for people. I've met people on this podcast who had cancer that everybody in the West said was terminal, and they go somewhere else, and
Yeah.
couple years later, it's gone, like completely
Yeah, it's
gone,
pretty
and
cool.
it's incredible. It really is. From the jungles of South America to the jungles of India, I've heard stories
Yep.
everywhere, and it's pretty damn incredible.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
But
I even heard just like through spiritual practices, people getting so there's this, have you ever heard of the hugging saint? Her name is Amma. She doesn't travel so much anymore, I think, since COVID, but she used to go, she was a young girl in India in a village when she was 14. I think she's probably in her late 60s now, but she realized her gift was hugging people to cure them, to heal them, first of ailments of the heart, but then it she soon came to realize, and other people came to realize, that her hugs healed people of physical ailments.
hmm,
So she began going around to different villages and then to different countries, hugging people. And she came to DC. I was living in the DC area. She came to DC every single year, but I went one year. This is probably, gosh, about 10 years ago for the first time. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to go see this hugging saint. But I was in line because there are lines and lines of people that come to hug her. And one of these women volunteers, she said she had stage 4 cancer, and she went to see Amma, and her cancer went into remission like weeks after. So
hmm,
it's like that high vibrational energy of love that this woman she holds it. She embodies that high vibration of love, and that high vibration can heal people, which, you hear stories of that in India too, of you go to these gurus and they can heal. So yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty powerful stuff.
it's mind blowing. I mean, it really is, and I never heard of the hugging saint before, but that's
Yeah, look
something.
her up.
That's,
It's AMMA. I'm sure if you look up AMMA and then hugging saint, a bunch
it'll
of stuff
pop up.
will come up on
Yeah,
her.
I'm sure. But that, I mean, that's interesting. a woman that could heal by hugging. That's This world never ceases to amaze, and yet I haven't heard of her because she gets no media coverage when she really should
No.
be getting media coverage, because stuff like that is what we need to know about.
Well, the
But
thing is, here's the thing, and actually, one of my favorite motivational speakers who has passed away since, maybe 2015, Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. He once visited a guru in India, and the reporters were asking this Indian guru why he doesn't perform these miracles, if you will, in public. And he said, where there is doubt, miracles cease. Where there is doubt, miracles cease. So if you have a bunch of people in a room saying this can't happen, this can't happen, this can't happen, this can't happen, is it
Yeah.
the miracle? Is it because of the belief, or is it because of the observer?
I mean, it's both in a way, because
It's both in a way, right?
manifestation is 100% real, and
Yeah.
negative manifestation works just as much as positive manifestation does. So if enough people believe something's not going to work, then it probably is not going to work. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
the way things tend to go. So, I mean, I can totally get why he would say that and why he believes that. I also could see why someone who was like being a fake magician could do the same thing and say that and be,
True, right?
but
Yeah.
I mean, something like that, I feel like it's more real. Like, it's just like, no, I don't want people to witness it, because they will cast doubt on it, and that's going to cause it not to work. And this guy's not trying to make, and he's not trying to make quick buck. So that's how you know he's real, because he's not trying to make a quick buck off it by doing it in front of people to get more people to come to him. Like, so, which actually a fake would never do that. A fake would never do that. They would always want more people to watch because they want to make more money.
Exactly.
So, but
Yeah.
logically, it makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
And there you go, folks. That's what I like doing this show. I like to make it so that people can't have doubt about these things, because I'll logically prove they do exist. So
Well, I can tell you a story about levitation being real from firsthand experience.
intrigued, please.
Yes.
Continue.
So let me just tell you this. I am by nature, even though I'm extremely spiritual, I listen to the angels, I believe angels do speak to me, I'm very skeptical. Let's put it that way. I'm very skeptical. So when I
It's a good way to
started
be.
I started studying at the Chopra Center. I'm sorry, what was the question?
I know I said that's a very good way to be, especially when you're in the
I
spiritual
was
world.
like
Like, you need to
skeptical.
be
I'm like, I
skeptic.
don't know if this is really real. When I learn something, I'm like, yeah, okay, prove it to me. So when I was learning meditation, I was really super skeptical about learning meditation, and I didn't think it could work. And I will bypass the real story, which is within a week of going on a meditation retreat with Deepak Chopra, I cured my fear of flying on the first flight back to France, which was a 14-hour flight from LA to Paris. And that was the first amazing miracle that happened. But the weird thing that happened was in 2010, I went to this meditation retreat there was a retreat within the retreat. So it was a very small group studying with Deepak Chopra. And it was a silent meditation retreat for 3 days. There were 30 of us. And on the second day of the silence, we were in a room. They said to us, "You're going to learn how to levitate." And it was like, what? And you walk into the room, and there are 30 air mattresses for us to sit on. And the amazing thing is, I was not only very skeptical, but I was really afraid too.
Mhm.
And I was afraid because of all of my Catholic conditioning. And so that is in the back of my mind, right? That all that, you're going to go to hell for this, right? You're doing this weird thing. And so with that in the back of my mind, we sit down on these mattresses individually. And he's teaching us, Dr. Chopra is teaching us these mantras, which are called sutras, which are longer mantras, if you will.
Yeah.
And he said, these mantras are going to allow you to levitate. And we're like, okay. And some people had actually been through this before, so they knew what it was. And so we are silently saying these mantras. And all of a sudden, my butt is literally lifting off of the air mattress. And we didn't take drugs. We were not in a trance. You could open your eyes and look around and see everybody else. Like it wasn't, it wasn't like we were told to do anything specifically. It's like, if you want to, close your eyes, say these mantras. And so I could feel like my bottom lifting off of the mattress. Now my knees were kind of still, sitting in cross-legged pose. We're still kind of on the mattress, but I was like, whoa, so I stop, sit back down. But what was weird is that when people are going through a spiritual awakening, a spiritual release, they will do very weird things. So some people will like talk, some people will moan, some people will like scream, and I was not prepared for that at all. So it wasn't so much the levitation that freaked me out, it was everything else going on in the room that was freaking me out. And the first thought that came to my mind was like demon possession.
Yeah, I was gonna say I could see the priest being like, only the possessed will float. You gotta take yourself right to hell.
So I like got up and I ran out of the room, and it was like, so I missed the rest of the session, but that was my story but I actually did levitate for a few seconds. And levitation is totally real.
See, I would have freaking stayed in there and mastered that shit, because I can't imagine how comfortable it is to sit on a couch and levitate while watching TV. That's gotta be comfortable as hell. Like air be the best cushion in the world. Like
it was pretty, it was pretty cool. When I really calmed down, I could embrace how cool that actually was. But since then, I've totally forgotten what the mantras were. So
of course,
there you go.
I'm sure it's a type of mantra that if you don't do it every day, it's gonna completely slip your mind eventually. Like
and it was in Sanskrit, and like I said, it was more of a long mantra. So
yeah.
But yeah, that was my levitation experience.
Awesome. That is an awesome story. And I gotta ask something. Did you happen to notice how what was the highest somebody got actually? If you happen to notice.
Yeah, so I didn't see people levitating that high. It was probably like a few inches. What Deepak Chopra explained to us was it's called the hopping meditation, because most people will kind of like levitate a little bit and then just fall. That's why we had the air mattresses, and fall back down. So it kind of looks like someone is hopping forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of like one of those plastic balls in one of those like air tubes that just like keeps it floating up in the air. Like
yeah, so it was kind of, it's kind of cool, but so I don't know, had I stayed, maybe I would have noticed something different. But you're in it. So like if you're in the mantra, your eyes are closed because you got to focus on the mantra. So you're not really looking around so much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. And it's just the fact you can levitate at all. It's freaking awesome. I mean, that's basically.
Yeah, I know. I was like, what? This is real.
That's one step towards superpowers. I'm just saying. But in a way, but levitation's a step to flying somehow.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, there have been flying humanoids seen around the United States over the last decade, so I don't know what to believe with that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I have not heard that, but then again, I don't run a paranormal podcast, so.
I heard about that way before this, but I mean, it's just, and it's a California thing, really. Over airports, they see like what look like humanoids in metallic suits, like with some of them were seen with jetpacks, some are not seen with jetpacks, but they're
they're Mandalorians. I'm just teasing. I like the Mandalorian, so I'm like, they're Mandalorians.
I wish. Trust me. This would be the way if that existed. This would be the way. Trust me.
Yes.
But, God. Yeah. Okay. My Star Wars love just took over for a second there. But Oh, for the last 10 minutes of the show or so, 10 minutes of the show or so, freaking, I want to give you a chance to talk about your books, just to kind of tell us what they're about.
Yeah. I have all 11, but
Oh my God. Okay.
yeah, no, I have 11 published books, but which one like intrigues you the most? Let's see. I have two
Well,
books.
okay. I'm not gonna lie. The one that intrigues me the most is I think my loved one is an alcoholic book.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I will definitely talk about that. Is there someone in your life who was an alcoholic, is an alcoholic, recovering addict?
Well, I mean, she doesn't listen to this podcast, so yeah, my mom.
Oh,
my
okay,
mom
sure.
my mom has had a problem for a while.
Which, 1 in 10 people have a problem with alcoholism. 1 in 10. So it's fairly common. Even though it's been thrust into the shadows, there's a large stigma surrounding alcoholism. Still,
Yeah.
you would
Yeah.
think there wouldn't be, but there is. And so, yeah, my book, Help, I Think My Loved One's an Alcoholic, a survival guide for lovers, family, and friends, was written because I was in a relationship with an alcoholic for 5.5 years. And I wasn't sure what it was as a disease because I hadn't grown up with someone who was an alcoholic. I grew up with a very dysfunctional person, my mother, who was mentally ill, but I didn't know what it was. And so I began to do some research and I realized there wasn't a lot of material for people who have people in their lives who are alcoholics. And apart from Al Anon material, there's not a lot else out there.
Yeah.
And so I began to do my research and I interviewed 10 alcoholics in long-term recovery. I went to a ton of Al Anon and AA meetings to gather a lot of information. And I made my book to help anyone who has an alcoholic in their life, whether it's a mother, father, brother, sister, best friend, lover, husband, or wife in their lives, to understand the mind, the heart, the soul of the alcoholic from the alcoholic's perspective, but also to help you who is in a relationship, any type of relationship with an alcoholic, to better understand the dynamic and to help better understand your role in the process because it's a dynamic duo, right? It's a relationship. And so you have your part, they have their part. Um, but what it did by interviewing these 10 alcoholics in long-term recovery is it helped bring truth and then compassion to the disease of alcoholism because a lot of times we tend to villainize
Yeah.
the person who is the alcoholic and we don't separate the person from the disease because it's hard not to. Like it's hard to separate those two.
Because I mean, it does. It feels. I mean, from my own personal experience, it feels like it's that person's choice. At a lot of times, it feels
Yeah,
like it's their choice to be this way. And why? Well, okay. Let me back up a step here because
sure.
this is something I debated with a lot of people about this. And since you actually did all this research, your opinion would really interest me.
Sure.
What is your definition of an alcoholic?
An alcoholic is a person who, once they take that first drink, the first drink of the hour, the first drink of the day, they cannot stop themselves. That is the definition of an alcoholic. And for some alcoholics, it's something that they can do in the beginning because it's a progressive disease, right? It's
Yeah.
progressive, it's consistent, it's progressive, and it's ongoing, right? It'll just keep getting worse over the course of their lifetime. And it's a brain disease first and foremost. And the thing is that it takes over the brain. So it hijacks the brain into believing that alcohol is the only thing that can make them stay alive eventually.
Yeah.
But there are alcoholics who are alcoholics on beer only. There are alcoholics who are alcoholics on wine only. There are alcoholics who are alcoholics on hard liquor only. And there are alcoholics who only binge drink on the weekends, but are able to carry on a 9 to 5 job during the week. But it has to do with once they start drinking, they have no control over whether they have one, two, three, or 20.
Yeah. I know the type, but I mean, see, because the reason I've heard many different definitions for it in the past. I mean, I've heard the definition that you're not an alcoholic if you don't drink every day. Like I've heard
Yeah,
that
that's not true.
definition, and I've heard the definition. I mean, oh man, that's actually always the main definition I went by is, and actually, okay, no, the other one I always went by was you're an alcoholic if you wake up if the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is have a drink, and it's the last thing you do before you go to sleep that night. Like, and you don't stop. Like it's just like that's. I mean, to me, that for a long time, that's what the true definition of alcoholic was: is someone who went from the time they woke up to the time they went to sleep every day and didn't stop.
Yeah, and that's not the true definition because I know many alcoholics, a lot of the ones that I interviewed who would give themselves a time of day. So they would say, I can start drinking at 5 o'clock on weekdays and after 11 a.m. on weekends. And they would actually give themselves a time and they would
Yeah.
stick to that time. But the problem with every single one of them was once they had the first drink, they had no bodily control over how many they would have after that.
Yeah, until they stop because their body makes them stop.
Yeah, and because the disease is progressive, it gets worse. So, they will always need a greater stimulus. So they will always need more or harder,
Mhm.
and they will typically compound substances as the disease progresses. But
Right.
it is, it's constant, progressive, and fatal. Like that. Those are the three parts of alcoholism.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I trust me, I've dealt with enough that it's just
Yeah.
it's not a fun thing to be around or a part of. So it's
Hmm.
also part of the reason I'm probably not one because I've seen what it does to people and I don't want that. I don't want to see my
Yeah,
kid. I would never want to see my kids have to go through that with me. So I mean,
absolutely. A lot of, yeah, and it's hard and it is genetic. It can be genetic. It can tend to run in families. Um Obviously it's behavioral as well, but there are such complexities to it that a lot of adult children of alcoholics say, like, I will never do that to my kids. I will never do that to my family. But then there are adult children of alcoholics who become alcoholics, right? So,
I know those too. Yeah,
yeah.
I know those too. So, but yeah, and I mean, yeah, that's what that book stood out to me because I'm just like, all right, I'm like, this book doesn't seem like it really fits with the rest. So
Oh,
this
yeah.
kind of
It's like one of these things is not like the others, like in Sesame Street.
exactly, and that right there is where I was like, all right, I'm bringing that one up then because that's kind of curious to me is like how that would come to be if in a spiritual world. Like, I mean, yes, it's a spiritual thing in some ways, but it's just not like one of these things is not like the other. Basically, best way to put
Yeah,
it.
and it's about health and healing, and a lot of my books are about health and healing, of course, but that came from direct personal experience and a way to find the healing within myself through that relationship.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
yeah, because, like, if you're a child of a parent who is an alcoholic, you did not choose it, right? Maybe your soul chose it to have that experience before you came here, but you don't certainly remember that. Um
no,
So
no,
you don't choose to have an alcoholic parent, right? That's just you're born into it and that's that. Like there's nothing you can do about it. But if you're in a relationship with an alcoholic, there there are things that you've chosen to be and that codependent type behaviors, and I talk a lot about recognizing those types of behaviors within yourself to be able to then come to a set of reasoning to be able to get out of that, which isn't easy because most addicts I know are extremely charming and they're very
oh,
magnetic.
I mean, yeah, there are the other spectrum where there are plenty of them out there that are just nasty SOBs, and you don't want to run
Yeah,
into them at a bar. But
right.
I've met plenty of ones who are the nicest people you ever meet, and they're funny, they're witty, and they
Yeah.
you like to hang out with them when they're drinking, and they're always drinking, so you want to hang out with them all the time. And I had a best friend like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I had a best friend like that until he died in a fire. But I
Oh,
mean, so
jeez. That's
uh,
tragic.
he was sick because of the drinking. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, cops didn't know if it was self-inflicted or just he passed out and didn't realize the oven was on still. But
Yeah.
so it's one of those things. But and they also tried to say he was using heroin. I'm like, no.
Oh my
no.
gosh. Yeah.
I'm like, no, he would never touch that stuff in the world. I'm like,
Mm.
no. But so, all right. Well, I'm actually extremely happy because you just proved something I've been saying for my whole life, and I'm not an alcoholic because I can stop. I don't need to keep going. I literally will say to myself, okay, that's good. I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
Like it's so okay. Cool. My logic worked out.
Now you
My
feel
logic
better.
works. I do feel better, so it works.
Good.
But tell my audience where they can find all your books and everything you do.
Sure. So you can find all of my books on Amazon. My website is michellefondinauthor.com. You can reach out to me at michellefondinauthor@gmail.com.
Well, there you go, folks. And of course, that website will be in the description as well, just so everybody can click right on it and go to it. And I want to thank Michelle for coming on today because it's been a really fascinating hour, and I freaking love this conversation. It was so joyful.
Thank you so much, Jerry. It was great having this conversation.
Worth me freezing my ass off in my garage as always. This show is, which I gotta get a better heater. I really do. But folks, you know where you can find me. If you don't by now, shame. But check the outro; it's all in there. And I will be back tomorrow for the second to last paranormal interview of this week. So yeah, it's a busy week for me. What can I say? I think I got a couple of those this month, maybe. So you're lucky. And we will see you then. But remember, the world's not normal. Never will be. Get used to it. And I'll thank Michelle one last time for coming on because it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night, everybody. You can find me on Facebook as Jeremy Bryant, or you can find me as Uncensored, Unapologetic, and Untamed UQ Podcast Collective Facebook group. You can find me on Twitter and the Instagram as @JugglerBastard, or should I say X now. And you can find me on TikTok as @JugglerBastard Podcast. You can also find me on YouTube as Paranormal The New Normal. And you can also find me streaming on YouTube as Blind Knowledge Network, because all knowledge is blind until they admit Bigfoot exists.